In China, shipyards that were distressed assets just years ago are now highly sought after. And if you happen to buy some back then, congratulations, you likely stand to make a windfall profit. Shanghai-headquartered DCL Investments made one such shrewd play more than 2 years ago. It's invested in restructuring bankrupt Yangzhou Guoyu Shipbuilding at bargain prices, becoming the yard's controlling shareholder in July 2024. Now this facility, with over 300 acres of land, 2 kilometres of Yangtze River frontage and 4 slipways able to produce up to 18 merchant ships annually, is generating positive cash flow by leasing to other shipbuilders. It can also bring DCL Investments a hefty return if snapped up by the next buyer. I'm Joshua Minchin, a reporter here at Lloyd's List, but this week's podcast comes courtesy of our APAC editor, Sichuan Shen, and behind this story is the unfolding of the latest shipbuilding cycle. Order books swell, ship prices surge, yards profits rebound and capacity expands. But spectres of the past haunt, with rampant overordering ending yet another devastating crash. Those who lived through the order bubble prior to the 2008 financial crisis can't help but worry about history repeating itself. Sanguine voices, however, counter that history won't simply repeat itself. This cycle still has room to run, optimists say, fueled by fleet renewal demand amid massive ageing tonnage and tightening emissions rules absent in the frenzied 2000s. Meanwhile, the industry outlook is intertwined with various uncertainties. Can vessel earnings justify rising ship prices? Can shipyards resolve labour shortages? Is the IMO able to accomplish its green ambitions? And will excess capacity expansion re-emerge in China, the world's largest shipbuilding nation, and disrupt markets? But first up, let's hear more about that shrewd piece of business I told you about at the top of the episode. The difficulties at Guoyu Shipyard actually occurred many years ago. It's just that now, with the industry cycle picking up, more attention is being drawn to it. However, the issues arose long before. We simply seized the opportunity during the bankruptcy restructuring process. Even before we secured ownership, we had already started revitalising its operations. So there are ships being built in its slipways, and we are earning rental income by leasing the slipways to other shipyards for construction. Moving forward, after taking full control, we are confident in the project's prospects and future potential, primarily because the assets are of high quality. This shipyard has 4 slipways, one with a 100,000 tonne capacity, one with a 70,000 tonne capacity, and 2 with a 50,000 tonne capacity. It can build a wide variety of ships, including dry bulk carriers, container ships, product tankers, and gas carriers. That's Wang Linyu, Managing Director of DCL Investments, and his confidence is certainly not unfounded. Guoyu is just one of several Chinese shipyards that have been revived over the past 2 years amid a booming new building market. Among them, the most notable is Hengli Heavy Industries. The company, which reopened in 2023, accumulated an order book of nearly 70 vessels in just a short year and a half, and later announced an ambitious $1.5 billion expansion project. Just last month, Hengli signed a strategic cooperation framework with MSC, the world's largest container carrier, in Geneva, to collaborate on new buildings, engines, ship repairs and retrofits. And the resurrection of Chinese shipyards is clearly far from over. We actually have a few more similar distressed shipyards in the pipeline. We are in the process of advancing these deals, but they are not yet finalised, so we are not in a position to disclose them at this time. Currently, large shipyards along the Yangtze River are scarce resources, and due to the environmental reasons, it's difficult to obtain approvals for building new ones. As a result, many companies are now looking for opportunities to acquire existing assets through mergers and acquisitions. If they can secure ready-to-use shipbuilding berths, such assets become highly sought after. That said, some builders, including Hengli, still seem to have secured government approvals for new shipyards. For instance, China's 2 largest private shipbuilders, Yangtze Tian and New Times, each announced their own plans in July. In response to the ongoing news about capacity expansion, even CANSI, the China Association of the National Shipbuilding Industry, has subtly expressed concerns about overcapacity. However, there are those who hold different views. Greek-based shipbroker Exclusive wrote in a recent market commentary that the expansion of the Chinese shipbuilding industry is a positive development for the global shipping market and will help to meet the growing demand for new vessels. It's also noted several factors that suggest the current situation is manageable and far from creating overcapacity.
According to the data we have now, no, it's not a concern because, as I mentioned at the start, we already seen orders going forward to 2029.
That's Dimitris Roumiliotis, a research analyst at Exclusive.
There are specific vessels, mainly LNGs and gas carriers, but we have orders going 4 years and a half forward. So at this point, we are not worrying about overcapacity. The order book to fleet ratios, at least for bulkers and tankers, are 9.2% and 12.6% respectively. And these are considering healthy. The tanker and bulker fleet is getting older, about 20% for bulkers and 35% for tankers in terms of deadweight are over 16 years old, meaning that these ships will need either replacement at the future or retrofits to make them more efficient. So again, they will need shipyards and shipyard slots. Of course, as we mentioned before, the IMO regulations will force at some point the fleet to renew with an alternative fuel or a new technology. And we must also consider that there is not enough capacity in order to have a huge renewal so fast. So the older ships will have to make some retrofit or some changes in order to achieve the IMO goals. So again, they will need shipyards. So no, at this point, as we talk, we are not concerned about potential overcapacity at the shipyards.
He's optimistic about the new building market over the next 2 years, which he suggests has been conservatively forecasted. And this echoes sentiment that our markets editor, Rob Wilmington, sensed at a major industry event recently held in Hamburg, Germany.
From visiting SMM this week in Hamburg, that's the shipbuilding, ship repair and marine equipment trade fair, I would say that the sector is very positive, with most shipyards have got full order books until at least 2026. The ship repair sector is benefiting from more demand for retrofits and conversions. There's still an element of catch-up from the pandemic for the ship repair sector too, so they're all doing very nicely. So the outlook from SMM is that the sector, in terms of shipbuilding, ship repair, also marine equipment, there are really no concerns, at least for the next 2 years, given that most of these businesses have completely full order books. I don't think, from talking to those in the industry, there's any kind of fear that there's going to be looming shipbuilding overcapacity. Quite the opposite, in fact. And we've seen Chinese shipyards in particular buying up old, previously mothballed yards that failed during a downturn in orders in the last decade. And that production is going to come on stream soon. It is actually needed because top-tier yards in South Korea and China have only been interested in taking on orders for very high-value ships, such as container ships, gas carriers, and car carriers. So there's a concern that there isn't enough capacity to build lower-value vessels like the more basic bulk carriers and tankers. Now, these last two sectors have quite small order books if you compare it to the existing fleet. So as a consequence, that fleet's really aging quite rapidly. Now, at some point, the tanker and the bulk carrier segments are going to have to invest more in new buildings. And there has been a fear that there won't be enough shipbuilding capacity to do that. This is going to be potentially more acute once the 2025 IMO emissions regulations, or who's going to pay for the emission regulations, what that's going to cost. Once there's more clarity on that, we may see owners start to order more of these vessel types. The sector has a sort of more level playing field in terms of conventional fuels versus alternative fuels.
While the proportion of dual-fuel vessels in the bulk carrier and tanker sectors remains relatively low, suggesting potential for growth, some ship owners have become hesitant about ordering new ships, as shipyard delivery slots are now booked through to the end of 2027 and even into 2028-2029. That's because the combination of longer lead times and still uncertain fuel technologies makes the risks harder to assess. However, this won't stop big players from continuing to return to yards for fresh tonnage, Roumeliotis believes.
I don't think so that this will be something that will prevent big companies and big owners from ordering new ships with alternative fuel, because they know that sometime they will have to change the fuel. So in order to reach a final fuel or a final fuels, because we don't know which technology will prevail, they will have to test it. And the best test is to have ships on the water and see how the infrastructures will work and how easy is to create an alternative fuel.
The maritime industry is facing a pivotal challenge: decarbonising the existing fleet. To address this, Lloyd's Register has been evaluating what this means for shipping stakeholders. Lloyd's Register's Engine Retrofit Report provides a comprehensive overview of fleet and technology readiness to transition to alternative fuels, including methanol and ammonia. This report considers the primary regulatory drivers, shipyard retrofit capacity and capability, as well as the importance of human factors and training. You can download the report at www.lr.org/ERR.
John Kotzias, the founder of Exclusive, thinks large shipping firms, especially public listed ones, need to reinvest to generate more cash flow, which is another source of demand for new buildings. One scenario is business diversification. A company specialising in one shipping segment might want to enter another, and then new ship orders will follow.
Somebody is using his money earned, which is stored in its deals, and it has to be spent. Especially listed companies, they would not like to return that back in dividends, so they would like to reinvest it in something that will create also a cash flow earning investment in the future. Or another disinvestment or another investment, like, I'm a container company, I invest in bulkers. I am a tanker company, I invest now in containers, or I exit from bulkers, I exit from containers, and I concentrate on gas. That is strategic decisions of very big companies, which we will be seeing more in the future, I think.
However, the reason the shipping market is so hard to predict, or so fascinating, is exactly because there are so many variables that can alter the future direction of the market.
Of course, there are some factors that could influence this momentum, like the freight market volatility. We have for almost 2.5 years a healthy market in all segments. Even in containers, as you said, after we saw the freights going back to 1,000 per TEU, we have a rebound the last months, and everyone turned again to the container segment. Also, there are a lot of supply chain disruptions that will also could affect the market. We also have green policies. If they became stricter, maybe they will force owners to run to the shipyards and make new orders with greener ships using more alternative fuels. We must also have in mind that it's the construction costs. We already have high prices comparing to previous years, and if these prices go higher, we don't know how the owners and the investors will react. Maybe someone will tell you, it's okay, I want to invest, I want to refresh my fleet, but now it's too expensive to do something like that. And also, we must always have in mind the global economic conditions. For example, now we have high rates at the central banks. If the rates will fall after 2 or 3 years, the financing will be cheaper. So many small owners will try and refresh their fleet, renew their fleet. It's not only how the shipbuilding market will be, it's a lot of things that will support or not support a positive outlook.
In addition, there are also concerns about the labour gap facing yards and the crunch for certain marine equipment due to supply chain disruptions causing delivery delays. For ship owners, however, the elevated new build prices, which seem yet to peak, are causing particular headaches when considering new orders. That's because, in addition to the strong appetite for fleet renewal, they must also carefully calculate the return on investment. Buying an 8,000 TEU dual-fueled box ship at $140 million assumes earnings of more than $50,000 a day for 15 years. And if you're buying a very large crude carrier at $140 million, you're making a bet in excess of $60,000 a day. Despite market excitement, there are those questioning how many people ever make money at these rates in the long term. But Kotzias believes the price can be justified if the time horizon is long enough.
If we break it down in bulkers and tankers and general cargo, containers and gas, I have some data here to provide. In the year 2030, about 69% of the bulker fleet, 86% of the general cargo fleet, 76% of the tanker fleet, 72% of the container fleet and 60% of the gas carrier fleet will be older than 16 years old. That's in 6 years from now, in 2030. So we will be seeing ships that become older. A new building order of today delivered in 2028 or 2029 becomes immediately a brand new ship when 2030 enters. So possibility that you have, as you mentioned before, a very large break-even per day to amortize the value of 140 million for a new building VLCC today. But when ships which today are competing in the market will be overaged and will be sent out, then the prime focus will be on the more modern and more efficient vessels, the vessels that burn less. Because burning less means less penalties, means less daily operating expenses for the voyages, for everything. So I think in the long run, not in a 5-year period, this investment becomes viable. But if you take it in a shorter period, a snapshot of a 5-year period, it creates some headaches.
What Kotzias has doubts about, though, is whether placing a more expensive dual-fuel new build today would make good sense, especially for smaller ship owners. And he shared a story about a discussion between him, an owner, and a charterer to that end.
We were discussing with a charterer and we were discussing with an owner the possibility of placing an order for a methanol-fueled Kamsarmax vessel. I will just put figures on the table and I will let you give me your feeling after we put down the numbers on the table. A methanol vessel today will cost you like 8 million more than a conventionally fueled new building. Like if you go to Japan today, you will be able to contract a Kamsarmax for 42 million versus 50 million, which will be the methanol-fueled alternative. Keep this 8 million in the back of your head. Keep it there. Now, methanol today roughly has the same price per ton as the ton of fuel. It's about 20% less, but let's keep it that it's the same roughly. Because of its fuel density, lower energy density, you will be needing twice the quantity of methanol to produce the same output, to maintain the same level of fuel endurance. So this roughly gives you a double bunkering cost. If you consume 20 tons a day, by 500, which would be the fuel cost of today, that's $10,000 to run it with IFO, and $20,000 per day to run it with methanol. We don't have enough methanol, so we will have to go into e-methanol and producing methanol in a bio way, in a green way, which we hear that its cost will be more than what it is today. So we will be having a ship running on methanol with a bunkering cost instead of 10,000, maybe 25, maybe 30, maybe 35 or 40,000 a day. That's significantly more for any charterer or for any operator because even on voyage basis, your expenses are much higher, your bunkering costs are much higher. And can you offset with any kind of taxes, any kind of EU ETS, any kind of carbon pricing penalties, which will be so severe as the extra amount of bunkering that you will require? No. The straight answer is that you will be running a very green ship, but the charterer will have to pay heavily to keep it running with methanol. And this 8 million that you have paid, which I told you to keep in the back of your mind, is your extra capital expenditure. This extra capital expenditure has to make money, has to return a premium, because you have a premium ship. And here you're talking of a ship that will be running more expensive than a conventional fueled vessel. So how can this methanol ship, which is what everybody would like to have today, be efficient in economic terms, in purely money that it makes versus capital that you have invested? So your return to capital invested is probably much negative, much more negative than what you would anticipate with all the green hype, which will give you credits. So this is a little bit, in a nutshell, conversations we had with a charter who says, I'm refusing to pay a premium. And talk we have with an owner who says, who's going to give me back my 8 million, plus, who's going to be chartering my ship, because my ship might not be wanted, in the chartering market. So we end up with a vicious circle coming back to, yes, it's a green ship, but nobody wants it.
Cotius argues that the so-called best alternative fuels have been continually changing over the past few years, but none have truly provided the optimal solution. Maersk's recent pivot to LNG is seen as a good example of that. But meanwhile, existing proven technologies such as optimised hull designs and new energy-saving engine technologies can already deliver a significant emission reduction. These benefits are immediate and do not require investment in new infrastructure.
A TC description of a Japanese Kamsarmax that has come out of the shipyard, utilizing the latest in ship design and latest of machineries and technology, claims that at 11.2 knots, it burns only 12 tons of fuel plus 2 tons for its auxiliaries. This, in comparison with an eco ship with an electronic engine of its same peer group, Kamsarmax, is a reduction of about 37 to 40% of less fuel consumption. Also, if we compare it with the lean-burning, non-electronic, non-eco tagged Kamsarmaxes, it is more than 55% reduction in consumption. And this is also a reduction in emissions. Immediately, and just to be fair and square, I would just add that from a major Chinese shipyard, similar consumption can be achieved.
For now, these ships seem to be the pick of most tramp shipping owners, and this is likely to persist if the IMO carbon pricing lacks ambition. That's certainly good news for reborn yards like Guoyu, which are still new to building alternative fuel ships. The shipbuilding cycle looks set to continue with its mantra unbroken. And I think that's where we'll leave it this week. But remember, you can listen to every single episode of the Lloyd's List podcast on Spotify, SoundCloud, on our website, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back next week for more stories shaping shipping. Goodbye.